Good morning and welcome to the Anne Arundel County Delegation Meeting. I'm Delegate Heather Bagnall, Chair of the Delegation with Vice Chair Dana Jones. Delegate Dana Jones, before we conduct further business, I would ask everyone to welcome Delegate Nick Kipke, District 31, who will be offering our pledge and our prayer today.
Good morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the blessings that you've bestowed upon all of us. We ask you to help us be a blessing to the people that we serve. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Delegate. I want to welcome our senators, Senator Don Guile from District 33, Senator Pam Beidel, District 32, Senator Brian Simonaire from District 31, Senator Sarah Elfreth from District 30, Senator Jim Rosapet from District 21, and Senator Clarence Lamb from District 12. I also want to welcome our guests, the Anne Arundel County chapter of the AARP, Virginia Crespo from the Maryland Retired Teachers Association, Hannah Dyer and Ethan Hunt from County Executive Stuart Pittman's office, Jessica Cook from the office of Senator Cardin, Jessica Clayton from the office of Senator Van Hollen, Alderwoman Rhonda Pindell Charles representing Ward 3 in the city of Annapolis, and Bridget Smith from the office of Congressman John Sarbanes. I also want to recognize our counsel, Matt Carpenter, our delegation secretary, Roger Massey, my chief of staff, Rory Nolan, and Josh Paper, chief of staff to Vice Chair Jones, who is doing double duty for us today in providing technical support for the meeting. As a reminder, all delegation meetings will be on Zoom due to space constraints. Now, today we have one bill to vote on and two bill hearings, House Bill 1093 and House Bill 343. We had a change to the agenda late yesterday. House Bill 1395 and House Bill 1410 will be heard next week. We hope that our delegate gets well soon. And Mr. Secretary, if you can call the roll for the record.
Roll for the record for February 16th, 2024. Vice Chair Jones.
Aye.
Delegate Barnes. Delegate Bartlett.
Aye.
Delegate Chang. Delegate Chisholm.
Aye.
Delegate Henson. Delegate Howard is excused. Delegate Kipke.
Yes.
Delegate Lehman. Delegate Munoz. Delegate Pena-Melnick.
Yes.
Delegate Pruski.
Here.
Delegate Rogers.
Yes.
Delegate Smith.
Yes.
Delegate Simmons.
Present.
Chairwoman Bagnall.
Yes, and Secretary Massey, it looks like Delegate Munoz logged in, so if you could call her for the official roll call record.
Delegate Munoz.
Oh.
I think I heard a yes.
Yeah. I see her on the screen. So.
Okay, we have quorum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. All right, we are going to start with the vote on House Bill 668, Anne Arundel County Sheriff Salary. As a reminder, this bill makes the salary for the sheriff equal to a captain in Anne Arundel County at step 20. As this is an elected position, the salary level for the office of sheriff is statutory. Can I have a motion on the bill?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Secretary, if you could call the roll.
This vote is for House Bill 668, Anne Arundel County Sheriff Salary. Vice Chair Jones.
Aye.
Delegate Barnes. Delegate Bartlett.
Yes.
Delegate Chang. Delegate Chisholm.
Yes.
Delegate Henson.
Yes.
Delegate Howard is excused. Delegate Kipke.
Yes.
Delegate Lehman. Delegate Munoz. Delegate Pena-Melnick,
Yes.
Delegate Pruski,
Yes.
Delegate Rogers,
Yes.
Delegate Smith,
Yes.
Delegate Simmons,
Yes.
Chair Bagnell.
Yes. And for the record, I think we're having some audio issues hearing Delegate Munoz, but I do see her on the screen. Delegate Munoz, if you could give us a thumbs up to confirm you are a yes. All right, thank you very much. And I can confirm I see her on the screen.
We have a yes.
I just want to make sure we've got the official record and we're recording all of our members correctly.
The vote is 12-4 and 4 absent. Motion passes.
Thank you very much,
We
Mr.
will do a
Secretary.
letter to ENT.
Thank you. I'm going to turn my virtual gavel over to Vice Chair Jones for the remainder of the meeting. Madam Vice Chair, if you would call the first bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 1093, Human Relations Commission, Subpoena Enforcement. Chair Bagnell, if you would like to introduce your bill and your panel.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. Good morning, colleagues, and thank you for the opportunity to present House Bill 1093, Anne Arundel County Human Relations Commission Subpoena Enforcement. This is a local bill requested by the Anne Arundel County Executive to grant the Human Relations Commission of Anne Arundel County the same subpoena authority as the state commission on which it was modeled. Currently, the county's Human Relations Commission, which was established by County Council Bill 5719 in 2019 by a Chairman Pruski, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Councilwoman Lacey, is empowered to receive, mediate, and adjudicate complaints of discrimination in housing and initiate and investigate matters relating to discrimination in housing. As amended, the bill would allow the Human Relations Commission to seek enforcement of a subpoena at the circuit court in the same manner as the state commission. So, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Currently, the commission has explicit subpoena authority, but implied enforcement authority, which may or may not hold up to scrutiny if challenged. With that, I would ask for a favorable report. And I am joined by the County Executive's Director of Government Relations, Ethan Hunt, as well as County Attorney Greg Swain, and the county's Director of the Office of Equity and Human Rights, Asha Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Ethan Hunt, Director of Government Relations for County Executive Pittman. I believe Mr. Swain might be in the waiting room trying to get into the meeting. First of all, I want to thank Delegate Bagnell and Senator Guile for requesting and introducing this bill. And I also want to thank their staff for working with both us and our Office of Law, as well as the Attorney General's office, to make sure that the language of this bill effectuates the intent that we're trying to achieve. I know there will be an amendment at some point offered. And so, as Delegate Bagnell said, this bill with the accompanying amendment will grant our Human Relations Commission authority to seek enforcement of subpoenas through an application at the circuit court, which is the same process that the State Human Relations Commission uses. And our Human Relations Commission is empowered to receive, mediate, and adjudicate complaints of discrimination in housing and initiate investigations. However, I do want to point out that the overall purpose of our Human Relations Commission is much greater. And under the county code, its purpose is to promote and enhance the ability of all Anne Arundel County residents to live their lives free of discrimination. Currently, we are the only large county in Maryland without a local civil rights law prohibiting various forms of discrimination. We are working to address this through local legislation to add employment and public accommodation discrimination to our local laws, which is similar to other large counties as well as the state. This bill will support that effort by giving the commission enforceable subpoena authority for investigating complaints of discrimination that are submitted to the commission by residents of Anne Arundel County. And so in order for the commission to best meet its charge in promoting and enhancing the ability of all county residents to live their lives free of discrimination, this legislation is required. I do have our county attorney, Greg Swain, here, who can answer any legal questions about why this is necessary. And I want to turn it over to Asha Smith, who's the director of our Office of Equity and Human Rights, to just briefly explain how this will work and further their mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. Good morning. I am Asha Smith. I am the Director of Equity and Human Rights in the Office of the County Executive. As Ethan explained, the Anne Arundel County Code does authorize the Human Relations Commission to undertake investigations of housing discrimination currently. And as he mentioned, the administration plans to propose legislation that would increase that authority to include private employment and public accommodations throughout the county. This, of course, would be consistent with what other local jurisdictions do, not just in the state, but nationally. These investigations, and any investigation of discrimination or harassment requires us to seek information from the potential respondent and witnesses. That's the only way that a fair and effective investigation can be done. We're currently doing that through requests for information, but the subpoena power obviously would allow us to be able to more effectively and thoroughly conduct those investigations. And so for this reason, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 1093.
And Madam Chair, if I may just mention that the amendment did go out to the entire delegation, the proffered amendment.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And does that conclude all of your panel that's here? I'm just going through everyone's.
That does. Thank you.
All
Thank
of
you,
our
Madam
Brady
Chair.
Bunch boxes. Thank you so much. Any questions from the members? I see Delegate Kipke is first up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Vice Chairman. I just want to understand better the process. So when a subpoena is sought, there's an interaction with the circuit court, it sounds like. Can you tell me specifically how that works? Is it just filing a paper? Is there judicial oversight? Can you help me better understand how that process works?
Sure. This is Greg Swain. I'm the county attorney. The process that we would envision is that the Human Relations Commission would issue the subpoena. We would only have to turn to the circuit court if the subpoena is not complied with. And that would be on petition to the circuit court for enforcement of an administrative subpoena pursuant to this law. That would, the circuit court would then have an opportunity to explore whether the material that was sought or the testimony that was sought was relevant to the underlying proceeding. And then the court would issue notice to the witness to produce either the documents or produce testimony. And if the witness does not comply with that request, then the court would view that as a contempt of court, and that would be enforced as any other contempt of court proceeding would proceed.
Thank you. And who did you say is reviewing that at the circuit court?
The circuit, whatever judge it's assigned to. A judge would review the request to make sure that whatever information is sought is relevant to the proceeding.
Okay. And just finally, is the subpoena authority limited to complaints, or is the subpoena authority open? Is there any restrictions on the subpoena authority?
The only restriction is going to be relevancy. So it could be conducted as part of an investigation. It could also be issued as part of an actual hearing.
But so what I mean is it limited to a complaint made by someone in Anne Arundel County, or could it just be the commission acting on its own without a complaint?
Well, the commission does have the ability, and the human relations officer does have the ability to conduct investigations on its own. That's part of what we're doing in Anne Arundel County is we are, as Ms. Smith said, we are pursuing additional local legislation to enhance and expand the powers of the Human Relations Commission into additional areas of employment, private employment, and public accommodations. As part of that, we've sort of reviewed the whole process that the Human Relations Commission currently uses. So what the process will be, if that legislation passes, is the opportunity for the commission to conduct investigations on its own accord, as well as deal with complaints that are filed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kipke. Delegate Shanika Henson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for not being able to turn my camera on. I did want to ask a question regarding the Annapolis Human Relations Commission. Is the jurisdiction of the Anne Arundel County Commission concurrent with Annapolis, or does Annapolis have exclusive over the events taking place there? How do the two work together?
We would view the, again, it's Greg Swain, County Attorney. We would view the jurisdiction of the city to be within the city and the jurisdiction of the county to be within the county, exclusive of the city.
Thank you. And then when it comes to the subpoena power and us potentially approving legislation to do that, have you guys had any conversation with the Annapolis Human Relations Commission to see if perhaps they wanted a similar grant of authority?
I have not.
Okay. And subject matter that you're seeking to incorporate as well with employment and accommodation. It sounds like that's a lot of great work that's also being done by the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. If a person got a remedy through Anne Arundel County, would they still be able to pursue a remedy with the MCCR?
Under our proposed legislation, if a complaint is filed with MCCR, that would supplant the local complaint. So we would defer to that state action, and that would terminate any action by our local Human Relations Commission.
Understood. Thank you so much. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Delegate Chisholm, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that was kind of where I was going, because we are hearing this bill right now with the Maryland Civil Rights Commission. So isn't this duplicative? I mean, I don't understand why we would need two agencies doing this.
Well, part of our legislation is to avoid duplicity. So, as I said, if a complaint is filed, if there are two complaints filed, if someone filed a local complaint and subsequently filed a state complaint, that would also supplant the local complaint. The intent of the local program is to have a more accessible and hopefully a quicker process for a complainant to pursue versus the state process.
And I guess your real drive is to broaden the scope of what the commission can do, is what I'm being told. Right now, what are you kind of limited to? Right now, somebody comes to the Maryland, the Human Relations Commission, or Anne Arundel Human Relations Commission, they file a complaint. You're able to do an investigation, but you do not have subpoena powers. Is that the way I understand it?
Well, right now, the human relations law only addresses discrimination in housing. So the purpose of our local legislation is to expand that to employment and public accommodations as well. Right now, we do have a process in place. The concern with the subpoena power is the enforcement of the subpoena, because ultimately the enforcement of a subpoena through the contempt power could result in a body attachment, which means you're using a civil process to put somebody in jail. And we want to make sure that we have clear authority to have that power versus any kind of implied power that may be implied under the Express Powers Act.
Now, under the Maryland Civil Rights Commission, they have now, if the bill passes, there's a monetary award that can go to the complainant instead of just going to the general fund. Is there a monetary value that is paid out in Anne Arundel Human Relations Commission?
What we are statutorily authorized to do is issue fines, but not monetary awards.
So the county would keep the money, not the complainant?
The money is a civil fine that goes to the county, correct?
Right. So my question, I guess, where I'm having trouble with this is, why would somebody who has the ability, you know, if we broaden this to public access statewide and then countywide, why would somebody be incentivized to go to the county when they can actually be awarded a monetary benefit by going straight to the state? And would you encourage them to do that, to say, listen, they also have this power and you can be paid back instead of giving the money to the county?
Well, I mean, that's an election, I guess, a complainant would have to make. I mean, what we would offer is hopefully a quicker resolution of complaints, but we're not authorized to issue monetary awards.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chisholm. I just want to make sure that Mr. Kipke didn't want another bite at the apple, as his hand is still up. We're going to
Thanks for asking. No, my questions have been answered.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Well, that concludes our hearing on House Bill 1093. Next, we will move on to bill hearing HB 343, Environment Cox Creek Citizens Oversight Committee membership. Delegate Munoz, if you would like to introduce the bill and your panel, please.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can. All
Okay,
good.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. So good morning, Anne Arundel County delegation colleagues. For the record, my name is Delegate Rachel Munoz, and I come before you this morning to humbly present House Bill 343, the Cox Creek Citizens Oversight Committee membership. The cross-file of this bill has already passed out of EEE and the Senate unanimously. It simply proposes agreed-upon changes to the Cox Creek Citizens Oversight Committee's membership. Our district team has been working with the Maryland Port Authority and our local community leaders for the past year to craft legislation that everyone is happy with. The adjustments to the Oversight Committee's composition outlined in this bill signify a concerted effort to ensure comprehensive representation from various stakeholders deeply invested in safeguarding the Cox Creek region. By including voices from esteemed organizations and local communities, we hope that we are going to ensure that voices are heard and valued in environmental decision-making processes. The Oversight Committee's pivotal role in monitoring dredged material redisposition in Cox Creek and addressing related complaints underscores the importance of its composition. I ask the delegation to support House Bill 343, recognizing its potential to foster environmental stewardship, promote community engagement, and safeguard the natural beauty of the Cox Creek region for generations to come. And for these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 343.
Thank you, Delegate Munoz. Do you have a panel today?
I do not know. I'm trying to keep it short and sweet for you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so very much. Do we have any questions from the members? Going, gone. All right. Thank you so very much, Delegate Munoz. Next, we would like to welcome Colonel Michael Sapp from Fort Meade. Is the Colonel on with us? All right. You know what? Maybe he is still logging on. We will move forward to Secretary Kevin Addix from the Maryland Department of Agriculture. Welcome, Secretary. If you would like to go on, thank you so much.
Good morning, and thank you very much. And good to see so many supporters of agriculture here in this delegation. We're here with really an informal update on the happenings related to agriculture and food production in the state, and really just to be available for any questions about legislation that may be out there or issues that are important to you. Just got a few quick things. First is that a majority of our budget for the Department of Agriculture is related to preservation and conservation. So yes, we are supporting an industry and we are regulating that industry, but we're also doing everything that we can to make sure that Maryland continues to be the gold standard when it comes to conservation programs related to the Bay and growing agriculture in a way that not only is good for the people, but good for our ecosystem. And we've been recognized over and over for our leadership within the Bay watershed. In addition to that, we focus a lot on preservation, of making sure that land, which in this neck of the woods, as you know, is quite valuable, that we are able to preserve that land to make sure that farmers have the capability to continue farming. I also wanted to jump to the evolution of farming, where 20 years ago, farming looked very different in Maryland. It was comprised of larger farms, fewer owners of farming and farm properties. And now what we see is, and it's because of development pressure and because of the interest of the community to grow food, we see many new smaller farms and even urban farms. And so our department is leaning into that and trying to provide services and take our services that used to be for large farmers. If you look at the Farm Bill, the programs there, much of the dollars from the Farm Bill, in addition to the food security programs, are going toward subsidies for large farmers. we're having to change how we look at things because of just the nature of Maryland and the development pressure. I will say that agriculture education is a top priority for us. You know about agriculture because you're hearing agricultural issues in Annapolis, but the average Marylander, the average resident in Anne Arundel County, is not interfacing with agriculture or farming on a daily basis. Where they are interfacing, and they may not connect the dots, is by eating, is by food. And we saw during the pandemic that if we weren't growing it locally, if we weren't producing it locally, it was at times hard to find. But we heard time and time again that folks who had a local farm they were connected to, someone down the road, someone, in South County or in another jurisdiction even that was drivable, they were able to get fresh cheese, fresh milk, eggs, meat, and when grocery stores were just choked up with supply chain issues. So we're trying to make sure that it's not just 4-H and FFA, which are incredible programs and should be in every neighborhood and in every school. But it's just general agricultural education, making sure that we have through chemistry classes, geography classes, history, whatever it might be, that agriculture is discussed in those. So we are working with the education department to make sure that ag is infused. Two things that are top issues of ours right now, and we've got some of the electeds who are leading the charge to solve these problems on this Zoom, which is great. Deer. Our farmers have noted that the overpopulation of deer in agricultural areas is costing some of our farmers between 30 to 80% of their crop. And by that, I mean of their revenue annually. And so we are focusing our efforts by coordinating with Department of Natural Resources that regulates our lands and regulates hunting, and linking hunters with farmers to make sure that we're using every currently available tool to focus our energy and effort on helping to control the deer population on farms. And we're also on the back end making sure that those hunters who are coming in, if they're not interested in taking the deer home with them, that MDA is paying for the processing of those deer to make sure that meat is donated to folks who need it. So we're trying to connect all of the available resources to help solve this problem, hopefully without legislation, but if it comes to that, we may come back. The other one is a concern about the taxation of farms. The fact that over the last few years, we've seen local producers of agricultural products, folks who are engaging in agritourism where you can go and pick up your ice cream, or wineries, or riding stables where you're learning how to ride horses, are being taxed at higher rates than those businesses had benefited from and expected over the years. And there are policy discussions ongoing. There have been some legislative proposals, and we're going to be leaning into some potential regulatory fixes as well. So just ask that you keep that on your radar. We're at a point now where we can't want to grow food here and then make it more expensive to grow food here. It's already more expensive because of the development pressure and just the cost of jobs here. But taxation is another tool that we can hopefully leverage. Solar. There's been lots of discussion about our administration and your efforts to move toward zero carbon, clean energy, and we're 100% behind that. We're working with solar companies to trial agrivoltaics so that we're not losing farmland to gain power. We need both. We need power and we need farmland. The problem is we're kind of in a bind where solar developers are looking for density of solar on wide open spaces. And for better or worse, that can mean agriculture. And so we're trying to figure out, is there a way to do this that is not delisting agricultural production, taking ag away? I always call it solar development because that's what it is. Once you put this infrastructure in, it is very unlikely to come out. Yes, there are hypothetical instances where you can decommission and turn it back into farmland in 20 years, 30 years, or when technology advances. We have not seen good examples of that are not overwhelmingly expensive. And so then essentially what you have are inoperable solar fields 20 years from now that are still not growing crops. And so we're trying to have good policy discussions. We're working with MEA and MBE on that, and our partners in the Department of Planning as well, to figure out incentives to make sure solar is going where it should be going. Of course, some of it will be on agricultural land, but it was described to me yesterday by someone that they're feeling as though this is a new gold rush on agricultural land. And then the only last thing I would say is to remind you that agriculture is the #1 industry in the state. And at the top of that industry list is our poultry industry. And today is Chicken Day in Annapolis. So I would invite you to the Calvert House for some fresh local chicken and to meet some of our growers who are growing food for us. And so with that, I appreciate your support, the opportunity to address the group, open to questions, and thank you.
Secretary, thank you so very much. I do see some members who already have their hands up. I will take this moment to thank you for your comments regarding deer population and the seriousness it has on agriculture, land, and health. So thank you so much for that, Secretary. First up, we have Delegate Simmons, please.
Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
I find it, yes, sir. Thank you for all the work you're doing. So obviously here in Anne Arundel County, as well as in Maryland, we look at how we're working better locally with our farmers. So my question to you is revolving around the Port of Baltimore. Obviously, the port in their relationship to being able to process products from our farmers and how best we can work with it. I know we're currently trying to get up one of the silos there. And what are we doing to be innovative to help process products that make it easy on our farmers, especially in Southern Maryland, Southern Anne Arundel County, to get their things out the port, as well as the fact that the port itself goes all the way out to Indiana as far as products that come into Maryland for processing and shipping internationally. That's one question. And the other one, I wanted you to talk about how y'all are working with our schools in reference to farming products and getting fresh food into our schools.
Great, thank you for both of those questions. Very quickly on the port, the port is an incredible asset. When you think about it, and you pointed to the fact that we're receiving agricultural products from the Midwest coming through our port on rail lines, and so how do we better make use of the fact that we have that port? We've been supporting entrepreneurs who are looking at building export facilities at the port and kind of regenerating export facilities. We've had them in the past. But you also mentioned, specifically Anne Arundel County. You look at something like the Lothian grain elevator and the community concern when that was potentially going out of business. And, in a place like Anne Arundel County, where development pressure is so high, and we need that development, but we also need agriculture. When you have something like the grain elevator, if that were to go away, very, very quickly, we would see agriculture be developed into something else because the support systems go away. The port and access to the port and operations like the Lothian grain elevator, where not only, and this goes for the port and the grain operation, if we want these industries here, we have to figure out how to best package, grade, and export those grains, but also maybe not the grains are the final form. Maybe flour is the final form. Maybe some type of value-added process is the final form. So we're taking a big look at that. We're working with the Department of Commerce as well. There's a lot of interagency collaboration on that, but we're doing everything we can to support grain farmers. And then on food in schools, very quickly, we do have a program. We have a farm to school program in our department, and we do a lot of work educating schools about the benefits of buying fresh and local food. It's more nutritious. It's fresher than anything you're going to get from a box truck that's been in a warehouse that's been transported across the country. It's just the reality of the nutrition density of food. We have a new program in the state, the Certified Local Program, that requires institutions in the state to purchase at least 20% from local farms, from certified local farms. And so it's a lot of greens, it's a lot of vegetables. Seasonally, it's a lot of fruit. But when you think about it, the growing season doesn't necessarily align with the school year. And so that's where we need this infrastructure built in so that we can harvest it, process it, freeze it so that it's fresh frozen, so that it's available. You know, peaches and apples and everything else are going to be available when it's needed during the school year. So we're doing a lot of work with the school systems on that, and working with them on a buying and selling platform so farmers will have better access to the school's needs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I see Delegate Schmidt's hand is up. Delegate Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Secretary Addix. I see how you keep us engaged with hot sauce and bourbon and wine over your left shoulder there. My question is, do oysters fall under? Yeah, there you go. Do oysters fall under agriculture?
So we've got a collaboration with DNR. The promotion of seafood and aquaculture comes through our department. The regulation of it goes through DNR, and that's simply because DNR manages our waterways, and they've got the boats and personnel and natural resources police and kind of licensing infrastructure in place. We're on the promotion side, so come to us to learn more through our Maryland's Best program about the benefits of these, whether it's our oysters, the Chesapeake chana, the blue catfish, et cetera. I do also need to say that we know that the snakehead was first found in Crofton. I want to make sure that we go on record that it was my uncle, Joe Gillespie, that caught the first snakehead and reported it. So we did suggest that it be named the Joe fish, but instead it was named the Chesapeake chana. So I just want to make sure at every opportunity that
I was
Uncle Joe
thinking
gets some credit.
the Crofton chana would have worked as well.
The Crofton chana would have worked too.
And then secondly, I saw a report, I believe it was yesterday, I was looking back through my email, loss of farmland statewide. Was that number, was it 12,000 acres? Is that what
it was? It was 12,000 acres. Now
Okay.
that report, it's the U.S. Agriculture Census. If you look at that, it's very interesting. We're losing farmland, as is going to be inevitable in a place where development pressure, population pressure is so high. We'd like it to be a zero loss year over year. I just don't think that's a reality, which is why preservation is so important. But when you look at the numbers, we actually gained in number of farms. We gained 121 farms since the last census. When you look at the numbers, those are small farms. And in some cases, those are farms with proprietors that don't have land access. They're not third generation farmer where it's handed down. They're working with us and DNR to use state lands to farm so that they can grow products for their community, or they're in places like Eco City in Prince George's County, or some of the other co-ops or urban farms. We're having to be innovative to deal with development pressure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think the innovation and also efficiency, right? If we have an acre that's being used and it's at only 40%, how do we get that to 60, 80, 100?
Exactly.
So I appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. This wasn't my question, but I was trying to rally the troops in the back of the chamber when that bill went up, because I do think it should have been named either the Anne Arundel County snakehead or the Crofton snakehead, because I remember when that story came out. I didn't know it was your uncle, but it was a fascinating story.
Thank you.
Yeah, my quick question for you is, I heard this stat and I just wanted to see if you could confirm. Do you know what percentage of our farms are still family owned?
Well, that's a good question, and the answer is just about all of them. And I don't have an exact number, but it's got to be almost all of them. We don't have corporate farms per se in Maryland. When you get into even the poultry industry, where you've got big brand names of integrators like Purdue and Mount Air and Tyson and others, they're just the folks that are actually hatching the chickens. it's the local farmers who are growing them, and they're family-owned folks, and that's something you would learn at Chicken Day today. We benefit in Maryland by the farming industry quite literally supporting rural Maryland. And these are, that support is on the backs of these small farmers who are hiring people, small family farmers. And as I mentioned before, we are seeing a transition from the multi-generational large-scale farmer to smaller individualized farms. We used to have farms over 100 acres. Now we're seeing lots of farms in the 2 to 5 to 10 acre range. And we're seeing that especially in places like Anne Arundel County in the exurban areas before you reach the full-on rural areas where you do see some larger farms still in existence.
Right. And I asked that because I do know that, nationwide now there's kind of this push to make sure that we're not selling our farmland to foreign adversaries or countries that might want to do us harm. So, and I think the stat I got was it was 95% or 94, 95% of all of our farms were family owned, which is great to hear.
Let's keep it that way.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chisholm. Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, it's always great to see you. I have the good fortune of being on the Environment and Transportation Committee, where you are a frequent visitor. And I just wanted to thank you for your great work and give a shout out to not only you, but really your whole staff. Your folks have been so responsive this year as everyone settled in, and special thanks to Rachel Jones, who really, really represents your agency quite well, very well in your absence. So thank you for that. My quick question, and I'm going to have to follow up with you offline, but recently it's come to my attention from some urban farming advocates that there is an issue that has come up. First, it was raised in Prince George's, but I understand it's a problem elsewhere with the urban farm tax credit legislation that was passed a number of years ago by some of the longtime members, like I believe Sandy Rosenberg and Ann Healy and others. And the interpretation of that you have to have a minimum of 1/8 of an acre. And Prince George's County, for example, is saying that anything less than that, and this is based on the state enabling legislation, somebody cannot apply for a tax credit. But as one of these advocates pointed out, the way the law is written, it allows for both indoor, and outdoor farming, meaning if somebody is growing stuff inside of a building, including apparently in some cases, people can grow plants if the lighting is right in their basement. So I need some help with that. At first, I thought this was limited to Prince George's, but then I was told, no, this issue has come up in several other jurisdictions. So I don't know if we need to revisit that enabling legislation or how exactly to deal with it. I don't know if you've heard of this issue before.
I have not, but I'm sure I hope someone on my team will be able to help build a response. But let's talk offline and figure it out. But this is indicative of the transition, what we're seeing, and why we're going from these larger farms to smaller farms and then urban farms. And we do have a small and urban farm committee now, which is meant to be that place where we're hearing from the community. We've got an agriculture commission, which is all the different commodity groups and grower groups, but we developed specifically a small and urban farm committee to hear things like that. So I'll talk with our team who manages that and figure out if we're hearing it, what we're doing about it. But this is indicative of the conversion of all of our programs that have serviced the larger farm parcels and the larger farm industries in the state. Then how do we make sure that state policy and then even county policies are giving a fair shake to the smaller and especially the urban farmers? What we love about urban farming, as we've discussed in the past, it's growing the food exactly where you need it. When you think of where food is grown around the country, it's grown far away and then shipped in. In the case of urban farming, not only is it grown exactly where you need it, in food deserts many times. But it's engaging the community in a way, back to my point about education, where if you didn't have that urban farmer there and you didn't have that fresh local food there, fresh and local food and the connection to farming would be non-existent. So it's important for us to solve this problem. So let's talk offline about it.
Thank you so much. And you're exactly right. There is definitely a growing interest in my district in urban farming. And this is an important tool for people, especially when they're, new to it. That tax credit can be very,
It's a
very
great
helpful
incentive.
tool in making it affordable. Thank you. Thank you for your commitment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any other questions from the members? I don't see any. Thank you so much, Secretary Addix, for joining us and for your presentation and for all that you do for the state of Maryland. We appreciate you.
Thank you for your time and for your support. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Next, we would like to welcome Colonel Michael Sapp from Fort Meade. I believe he was able to join us with getting over some technical difficulty.
Yep, we were knocking at the digital door, but no one could hear us.
I'm sorry, Colonel. It's our firewall. It's just amazing. Thank you so much. Please proceed.
No, I'm so used to our government processes keeping other people out. I appreciate the turnabout as fair play. It's so good to see so many familiar faces. I will say this is this is the peak of my enjoyment of being garrison commander, because I'm at that point where I now kind of know what I'm doing, and I have to leave in about 6 months because that's the way the Army likes to do this. But so this is definitely the best time for people to ask me questions, because it's the time that I know the most, and it doesn't have to be Chad telling everybody what's happening. So does everybody have the slides? I'm not used to
Yes.
Apple products. Okay, good. So I don't know how to push anything anyway in this case. But so the cover slide that we put out there, there is an MCOM installation management command format, but we've adjusted a little bit because what we really wanted to show, and you all know me, that my impetus of the entire command was about community through connections, reestablishing relationships, making sure that we have to keep the physical fences in place, but tearing down the virtual fences. Removing obstacles that we can to the relationships. And so a lot of those images we've picked are those that demonstrate not just what we do within the fence line, but how we really want to connect to take care of people, of service members, veterans, families, civilians, and the like. So for the next slide, our saddles to cyberspace, I do appreciate what the Secretary said about the state agricultural industry. Although the state does not control it, we know that the military-industrial complex is a huge boon for the entire state. The Fort Meade contribution to it, we like to do our history of from saddles to cyberspace. Right, 1917 it was mostly infantrymen and some cavalry that we brought in when it first stood up as Camp Meade, and then it continued on all the way to today, where the idea of power has changed. So shortly after World War I, in that interwar period, and tanks were being brought back from Europe to try and for the Americans to figure out what this new form of technology and warfighting capability was. And we became the home of the cutting edge of warfighting in 1920s. Well, and flash forward to 2020s, we are the home of cutting edge technology for warfighting capabilities. So what the Army used to run on beans and bullets, now we run on ones and zeros. And so that's the message that we keep trying to emphasize to everyone within the state or across the Department of Defense. So on the third slide, where I'll spend most of the time, and this is our one over the world for Fort Meade, the continuing trend is still about growth. But before I get into growth, I really want to start on that bottom right block. And so the installation vision. We have called ourselves the nation's premier platform for intelligence, information, and cyber for years. Cyber, I think, was added around 2010 timeframe. And that part is true. But what we realized as an installation and where we want to be, where the vision is taking us to, is getting to the point of being recognized by the Department of Defense, not just as the nation's premier platform, but as a power projection platform. So power is something that each military service views a different way. The idea of power is being able to assert national authority through military means. And so traditionally, of course, for the Army, that's in tanks, in troops, in helicopters and artillery shells. For the Navy, that's ships. For the Air Force, that's aircraft. And one of the things that we recognize, and within the cyber domain, there's a lot of recognition from the civilian side that cyber is power. The services recognize that cyber is important, but it's getting over that next step, that it is power. You can't win a war with an airplane. You can't win a war with artillery shells, but you can certainly lose it if you don't use it appropriately. And that's where we have in the lands of ones and zeros. So that's where we've looked at as a vision, is to get that recognition as power, because services tend to put money where power projection occurs. The second piece is of that, we've called ourselves the most joint, non-joint base, but recognition that there's joint is how we operate. Joint is not how money flows. Most often money flows through services, and that's a national level decision. And there's a lot of things we can't change, but recognizing that there's a need to have that discussion, because this is truly a joint base, as we will see on the next slide when we look in the numbers. And so the next piece of what I wanted to move to is the tyranny of distance that we have. So we like to reinforce that slide, that image on the top right, our map. While we're about 20 to 25 miles from each of the big locations, that it's drastically different in how we communicate, how we can move. And so is one of the things within the state is everything is built around Baltimore or around DC and how you flow in. But if you're trying to move from east to west across the state, that's a drastically different conversation. And so what could be a few miles can turn, or could be about 10 miles can turn into 30 minutes to 45 minutes pretty easily. And in order to get the workforce that we need to where we need them, that is one of those things that infrastructure and transportation is huge, and always a concern, not just for us, but for everyone in the region. And the continued growth. Since 2007, we were about 35,000 people. Today, we sit at about 65,000 for a workforce. The garrison services has shrunk by about 20% in that same time frame, because we look at Army-only numbers. There's still growth. It's not as exponential as it was, but it's bringing in a lot more individuals from leased spaces as they try to bring them into more secure and consolidated areas inside the fence line. But as we look at the state impact, the Maryland economic impact came out recently. Now, remember, this is state-driven data. But as we give the information as it was asked, and this goes back to that military-industrial complex, there's $6 billion in total payroll, with about $4.6 billion that went to Maryland residents. So we are federal, the largest employer in Anne Arundel County in the state. There was $18 billion in economic impact, with almost $10 billion that went directly to the state. And it's approximately 116,000 total jobs that were tied to Fort Meade all over the course of a year. There's also, although the numbers are smaller, it has a very acute impact, is healthcare. Purely for the people that are assigned to get healthcare from Fort George G. Meade, $60 million in 2 years went outside of the fence line to civilian providers, doctors, through the TRICARE insurance program. And so that's keeping a lot of people employed, and then, of course, keeping a lot of us healthy. And then the other aspect of growth is we even see some of the Maryland National Guard growth, which we'll get into when I talk about some of the organizations, but we're really honored to host some key National Guard partners. So the other thing on this slide is opportunities. The opportunities that we see have not really changed, but I think they're the same opportunities that you all care about in order to make lives better for Marylanders and for our people. And some of the ones in my time frame, Coon Hall was the resiliency center that I had the opportunity to cut the ribbon on, didn't have as much part to play through its growth as a partnership example between the civic and business community and Maryland and Fort Meade. But then education has been a key thing that we've seen the Meade High growth, and with the school redesign. So about 100 to $110 million that was invested from federal funds from the DoD into the grant, and then the state put up another $20 to $30 million in order to make that a premier high school. It will reduce a lot of the capacity issues, and as I don't know if you all have had a chance to go through it, but just the way it's designed will absolutely impact the lives of the children in that and their ability to study. Which goes back to some of what we know that we can bring to this fight is what we can do to improve the Meade cluster, the schools around us through partnerships, through military relationships, and then also the historic negative reputation of Meade High in particular. It's one of those, you don't have to look far into social media or greatschools.org or Google reviews to see that it gets a lot of criticisms, but my own daughter graduated from Meade High last year. I was with Miss Hummer, right? Julie and I were on stage together, both able to hand diplomas to our respective children. Like, we understand the challenges of the school, but we also think that there are opportunities there. And so we're working with the county to really highlight some of the new things that are happening and the growth, and highlight the good. And then I'm not saying downplay the bad, but also let's make sure that we're on even footing. Because one of the things that I do get concerned about is sometimes I think Meade High is seen by the public as a military school because it's on a military base, but it's only about 25 to 30% of a military population. So it is a county's school. Some of the other school things that have come up as concerns there are as we dig into data, we're realizing is Fort Meade is a compassionate reassignment base. That means the militaries, all branches of service, will look and go, if you have a high need child, Fort Meade's a good place to go. Why? Because of the National Capital Region and the resources it provides, because of Bethesda, Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. What we don't do is then look at the county and say, hey, we're bringing in dozens more special needs situations. The IEP, the paraprofessional demand is going up because of what DoD has tried to do. So that's something that we've recently uncovered that we're working with to address. We also, because of the nature of the military, have a high homeschool population. Anne Arundel County, as we understand it, is one of the fewer counties in the state that does not allow extracurricular activities at public schools for homeschool children. And so as people are looking to move here, that plays into their decision-making too. So they may go to Howard County because they want their children to be in after-school sports, even though they're doing a homeschool because of the transient nature of the military lifestyle. And then, of course, moving off the education, resiliency of the facility and environment is a great part of the relationship. And so we're working through intergovernmental agreements that has recently started. We work with Howard County for wastewater management. We are looking to see what we can do about the 198 bridge that caused so much angst a couple months ago because of the flooded trees and potential damage to that. The ability of our workforce to get onto the installation is huge. 65,000 people work on this base, only about 10,000 total, 12,000 total, about 1,500 single service members, and then about 10,000 family members. That boils down to only about 4,000 of that 65,000 workforce live inside our fence line. So we got to be able to get them here. So we're working through OLDCC, which is the organization that gave the grant to Meade High to find other opportunities for resiliency grants. And then much more quickly, if you look at the next slide for the population details, that just shows the breakdown of our military population. The green is a little less than half. So there is a little less than half of the Army of these 17,000 service members that are on base. But of that, you'll see it's about 4,500 active duty, about 2,500 reserve and guard. That is not a ratio you are likely to see at most active duty installations. And then you get the same kind of look with the Air Force and Navy. And so we really are a joint base from that regard. But the civilian population is very obvious. That purple is our DoD civilians as opposed to those that are working for a specific service. And then for the reserve, our two biggest partners that we have under the Reserve Guard component. First is the 32nd CST. That does the state's response for any weapons of mass destruction kind of concerns, chemical, nuclear response. And so we're proud to have 32nd as one of our tenants here, not only because they've been able to provide mutual support to us inside the fence line, but we know from our emergency responders that Fort Meade is uniquely positioned where you can get east to west very quickly. And so I've been off post many times where I see the Fort Meade fire truck respond, and then about 2 minutes later is when I see an Anne Arundel County fire truck or ladder truck come. And it's just because of our placement and access to roads. I'm glad that 32nd can provide that same kind of immediate response from being on site and then maintain their skills. And then the other one is the 175th Squadron. I'm aware of some of the challenges the state's going through with the loss of the A-10s and what they're trying to do. I know that there is a potential to move to a cyber. Clearly, there's not much of a better location in the United States for having cyber expertise than right here at Fort Meade. And so we have a small piece of the 175th, and we're always working and being open for the chance to grow that if the situation dictates. So the next slide, stationing actions, that's just for your reference. The numbers, so over the next 4 years, we're only looking at about another 2,400 only. Another 2,400, that's a relatively small drop in the bucket. But what you will see is they are all joint elements. These are not Army elements that are growing on this installation. And then last, after that, the Fort Meade organizations. This is a terrific one to see the breadth that we have here and the seniority. I don't take for granted that everybody knows, but Colonel, like as a garrison commander, I am a colonel. The Army kind of runs at the lowest level of being able to have the authority and autonomy to operate is at that colonel level. The stars, 4 stars is as high as you get. So whether it's an admiral or a general. And so 4 to 1, and so that gives just an idea of that kind of seniority. But then you have those one-offs, and I know Fort Detrick and Aberdeen Proving Ground have similar, but whether it's National Guard, whole of government with Department of Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Veteran Affairs. And then we also have even our own nonprofit residing on our installation with Sarah's House and the work they do for the county when it comes to managing home insecure families. And what makes it unique is it's in an old Army barracks. So families can stay there. It's not just a warehouse, and the number of responses that they get where people can sleep soundly at night because they're not worried about something happening to their children because they're in their own room. Next slide is really, that's the talking points, those strategic lines of communication in military terms, high-speed avenues and interstates and highways that matter is getting to the fort and for us supporting. Part of our mission is to support the National Task Force of DC. So if there, God forbid, is another January 6th or an emergency, then we can have that as our response is part of that because we're the only ones that can get to the NCR from this side of the Potomac. And then lastly, I won't talk through them other than to say these are the calendar of events that we want to make sure to put on your calendars to save the dates to make sure you know that you have the opportunity. I love Fort Meade. This is my 3rd time here. We're going to NSA, Texas. My wife and I are both working on that side. And so that means that I'm going to be right back here in probably about 2 years working on NSA Washington once again. So Fort Meade is my home. I am a Kansan by birth, and I'll never let that go, just like Ike. But Maryland is certainly my home. And so I'm proud to be a Marylander, and I'm proud to be back again. So any connections that we can make and give you opportunities to come to our events to understand more what happens on this city known as Fort Meade. Probably the one most near and dear to my heart is the garrison change of command, which August 6th is what we settled for that one. But certainly there are many, and I think the nearest term one is our IFTAR that is coming up shortly in March. Oh, we didn't even put that on this, Chad. I'm giving him a dirty look right now.
Oh,
Iftar is March 14th.
sir.
Yeah.
okay, good. Excellent. Well-
Questions, please.
Well, thank you so much, Colonel and team, for your presentation. I appreciate it. I do see some questions from some of our members, but taking a page from our presiding officer, I do want to just remind members that we are at 9:20. We are over an hour, and we've had, some of our members have had to drop off for hearings, other commitments, voting sessions, and we do have several other things this morning. So I would ask members to ask one question, please. First, I do see Delegate Mike Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and really more of a comment than a question. And that's just to say, Colonel Sapp, thank you for being a great partner and a community partner. And, as someone who is also a customer of the services, I'm appreciative of all the things that you guys do out there, Fort Meade, and it's always nice to know when I'm not, that I can pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, this isn't working. And it's great to see Gina and Stuart on the call, and I know all she does to support me through the partnership. But one thing that I would offer is, and I know that the Friends of Meade is trying to do this, like you. I have 2 kids that graduated from Meade High School, and I think it's helpful for us to really talk about all the positive things that are going on there and all the incredible programs that they have there that most people don't even know about. I mean, so while you do, when you go online, you can find some things that are, maybe less desirable. There are just so many things that are great and positive that we can talk about. And I think we just need to accentuate that positive, because there are just some incredible programs there, and I'll just leave it there. And once again, just say thank you. And Tim, good to see you as well.
Thank you, Delegate Rogers. Delegate Pruski, do you have a question?
I do. Just a quick comment.
Thank you.
Colonel Sapp, I want to certainly thank you for your service. If I can make the transition in August, I will. But if I don't, I have to say you have definitely put on a great job and building partnerships, and that's what it's about. And I appreciate everything you've done and the roles that I've even had. But I really have a couple questions. The Department of Defense sent me a letter, the O'Brien Gate, renovation or access. I know that information's online, but if you want to add anything about that. And last but not least, if you have any surveys or additional information that have been sent out either by the Post or DOD in regards to childcare, housing, or VA services. I know you don't, we can talk offline, but I know that over the years, childcare was a big need. And now I don't know if that's still the case. Housing, I put in a BRAC housing bill that I got criticized for, but now people are congratulating me on it because they want to live closer to base. So imagine that. Isn't that so? But also the VA. I know that we have the VA services on base, but we have Crownsville that's also being redone in the county. And I know there's a greater need for TRICARE service and anything. I mean, again, we can talk offline, but I'd like to get any recent info you have on those needs, because we're the policymakers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, so that's the easy answer. There's needs still exist. Our childcare needs, unfortunately, have more to do with workforce and getting the people that are willing to do the job for the amount they're going to get paid and to stick it out. And so, excuse me, and I know that that's a problem everywhere. But that we've shifted away from resources in the physical tangential sense and to the employees to do it, because we got a whole lot of building space. We don't have a whole lot of people that we can manage that ratio. Housing continues to be a concern, but people will also just ultimately go wherever they want, because we do have houses available on post that we can't fill, but it's because they want something that's a little nicer, a little more modern. So I do think that new homes built will make people happy, and that newness will draw them in as much as the availability of homes in itself. And then Veteran Affairs, absolutely. We're really excited to hear the governor talk about the Year of Military Families. And then I've heard the Secretary of Veteran Affairs talk about some of the rebranding that may go through, but whether or not it goes through, the fact is that it still exists, right? That it's not just about veterans, it's the families, it's everything that makes it a career. And that's what makes people want to join in uniform. People don't trust institutions these days. how do we get them to trust institutions? And part of it is to take the time to appreciate and show that appreciation for the people we've had.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Delegate Prousty.
I'm sorry. And then O'Brien Gate, that's part of 2030, 2027 to 2030. We're working jointly with the NSA to redo that entire MAPES 32 and O'Brien Gate entrance. And so that will largely be internal, but we expect that to relieve some of the pressure we see on 32.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you. Thank you, Colonel. Delegate Simmons, do you have a question? You're on mute, hon.
Yes, yeah.
There we
Thank
go.
you, Colonel. Thank you and your team for your remarkable service to our state and our communities. My question to you: you spoke about the overwhelming staff and volunteers there at the base. Can you tell me how can we better champion that through our schools? Because our superintendent is looking at ways of getting volunteers inside our schools, working with students and teachers. So those folks that may not be task assigned, their ability to volunteer within our school system.
Absolutely. So the hashtag Be Present is a fantastic method that they're trying to get after. And the military has what they call partnership in education. And that already exists where we can't do a lot of volunteering. I've got a commander who wants to do more work at the soup kitchens. And I told him that we have to be careful because we can't look like we're spending federal taxpayer money in order to do social service programs. But we can, it's in legislation that we can be in schools. And so our school liaison, Meredith McCandless and Talissa McMullen, the two of them are working with the schools to get it. And it's not just about Meade High. If there is a military child or a DOD child assigned, parents assigned to Fort Meade, and they go to a school, then we have a responsibility to work with that school to make sure that it's getting all the resources it can for sake of the child. So whether it's Howard, Anne Arundel, Carroll, or technically if they're coming from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, we get some long commuters that we should be working with those. So certainly we're using the Be Present to do that with our PI.
Thanks, sir.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you, Colonel. And I see that distinguished Senator and Chairwoman Pam Beidel is with us and has a question. Senator?
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. I just want to thank the Colonel. He has just been terrific to work with. As was said earlier, he really is a community leader, and I just look forward to the last few months with him. And I hope he trains his replacement to be as good as he is and as reaches out to the community as much as he does. So thank you, Colonel.
Ma'am, I think Chad's saying that no one could be as good as me. He'll say that for 6 more months.
I'm just a little upset that you're getting credit for the training.
Thank you.
She is a 49ers fan, and as a lifelong Chiefs fan, she and I did not start off on the right foot, but we'll get there. And truly, ma'am, I thank you for your leadership, for the state, for the county, for what you've done. You've had national implications on impacts on the things that you've done, and I really appreciate the partnership with all of you. The delegation is incredible. I can't admit that I've ever said anything nice about a politician before this job because I don't know that that's true. But it completely changed my dynamic. And then also for the community leaders, the business leaders out there, the partnerships like BWI Business Partnership and Fort Meade Alliance, and of course, the Central Maryland Chamber as well. That's just incredible support. And this would not work if not for all of you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Colonel Sapp and your team for joining us, for your presentation, and for all that you do for our country and for Anne Arundel County. We greatly appreciate you joining us this morning. So thank you so very much. All right, so next week, members and public, we will be voting on bills and holding additional hearings on county bills. We will have presentations from county colleagues, from Housing Department and Mental Health Agency, our amazing crisis intervention team. We will also hear from John Corin from Bike Anne Arundel. While there are a few of us left on this Zoom, let me just say this, Anne Arundel County colleagues, it's day 53 If you have a local bill and you are not on the schedule, please contact Secretary Massey today, as not to be the bearer of real news here, but crossover is in 31 days and we only have 4 more meetings. So it is crucial that you get those bills in. Organizations who wish to be acknowledged can email our delegation secretary at aacd@mlis.state.md.us. Are there any other announcements from members? Any other announcements? Fantastic. Can I have is there anyone left to give a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you, Delegate Schmidt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend and a happy President's